Great, welcome everybody. I'm calling the meeting to order. This is the October 9th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. Present are all counselors, myself, Counselor Shoup, and Counselor Kane. Next item is approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor? All right. Next item up is item number 4, discussion and action relating to stormwater fee. So this is a second conversation that we're having on this topic. We asked for more data and information about the current budget and CIP where a potential stormwater fee could be applied. So I'll pass it off to Tom and staff.
Yeah, really for continuity purposes, as you may recall, I was not at the last meeting. Liam was here, and if you don't mind, I'll have him just kind of introduce the material we've put together in response to the discussion last month.
Thank you, Tom. So just as a brief recap, what we discussed or what the committee's request was to better understand both what those current FY26 operating and capital expenses were that could theoretically be paid for by a stormwater utility fee. And so I think that was the first ask, which we've put together. Again, really these operational costs fall within 2 departments primarily, which is our engineering and technical services department and our public works department. Again, these are some are more exact than others, but but I think you see some of the necessary caveats and additional information there. But we came up with about $540,000 in current year operating expenses that theoretically are tied to MS4 or other stormwater related initiatives in the operating budget. Many of these expenses are kind of ongoing expenses, so we can expect to see some order of magnitude every year for this. So I'll go through our introduction, and then Angela can fill in anything else that she wants to make a point of. In terms of our capital plan, again, this looks 5 years out and gives some idea, a lot of watershed management plan capital investments, but gives some idea as to what those expenses would be or are going to be. And then the kind of third and last component was some trying to estimate out some additional overhead expense through standing up essentially a separate utility and what that might look like. I think these costs are really quite conservative, but not wanting to kind of continue the conversation and be responsive to the request. We think that at a minimum, it would require 3 additional full-time staff, administrative position, sort of an enforcement and inspector position, and then certainly a technical manager that would oversee the department. So that's sort of what and again, that's an additional $350,000, and that would be an escalated annual expense. And so all this is provided in an effort to just really understand what those potential fees and revenues would go to, and what the additional expense would be.
Great. Angela, anything you want to add?
Nope, I'm more interested in kind of questions or if you need more information.
Yeah. Any questions for
Sure.
Angela or? Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I guess first, when we look at the potential overhead for the personnel, I'm curious where you got those numbers from. I think in the last meeting I had referenced Bangor. And so when I look at Bangor and I look at how they break out their personnel costs, they're about over 100 they're like at 250,000. And so I think that was, I'm curious where you got the number, because Bangor's bigger and their personnel is about 100,000 less. And then Lewiston also, they're paying their public works director out of there. They're paying part of their finance director because they're processing payments. And so I think when we look at the overhead, I'm wondering if we're actually capturing what part of other parts of the budget that would actually fall under the stormwater fee. And so that's why I was looking at other municipalities to compare, because I would imagine like a public works director would be able to use like a fraction of a stormwater management fee, because I would imagine some of
So I can say, and I know Liam put those numbers together, but you'll see in our current budget, you do see personnel and engineering. That is my time, that's Jamie's time,
Yeah.
that's our engineering tech, and our new project manager, all do MS4 related things to, like you were saying. That would also alleviate kind of right now, because we are kind of stretched, we all do little pieces. So that kind of would alleviate some capacity for us. I would say if it got moved over to another personnel, I do think, I know Liam provided these 3. I think it's light. I think what you're describing in Bangor and Lewiston, and even Portland for that matter, are full engineering departments. That's not close, or a different type of public works department that includes some of those technical pieces that already had in staff, like internal design, those type of things that we just don't have that to be able to share some of that capacity, which probably Bangor and Lewiston do. They have a full-on engineering full department.
Yeah, I'd also add, and forgive us, it's a bit confusing for public works, for ditching and culvert work, for instance, that does include baked into this staff costs. There's an hourly rate that factors in staff cost, equipment rental, so on and so forth. So we can be, more granular, but it does capture some level of staff commitment and effort.
So I would also I'd add to that, there's kind of 2 pieces to this. There's, certainly we're doing MS4 work now, we're doing stormwater work now. And so that's kind of above the fold. Those are the current expenses if we had to tie that back to those initiatives and efforts. The $355,000, that's a a good figure for what those three positions would cost if we brought them on, and those would be new expenses. And so irrespective of the revenue side, which would be the stormwater fee, there's the expense side. And so that would be a new expense to the community if we were to stand up a standalone utility.
Okay, so the administration of it would not, and is that how the other towns structure it? Is they have a complete separate?
So there's other, the
administrative-
nuances of like, say, you're essentially creating another, I think I mentioned this before, either like a Portland Water District or a Scarborough Sanitary District at a very small scale, yes. But those also have, like, those billing pieces are already built in, like Bangor, Lewiston, Portland have that capacity built in, and it's just adding more, like, to push out billing, things like that. I know we do, I don't know, through finance, but I mean, I think this would be a higher lift than those larger towns already have the capacity built in.
I think I know one of the feedbacks that we got at the last meeting was just, I mean, you just said that you guys are kind of stretched sort of thin. And so I'm curious as to what exactly you guys are doing right now. Is it just permit work for new development? What is the
So
majority
we
of your
do-
time spent?
All oversight of all development in town, construction activity, as well as post-construction. So even after a project is done, we do annual, there's an annual process, it's all part of the MS4. But if we pulled that out, we're also in the middle of the Eastern Trail project. I'm wrapping up the signal work project at North Scarborough. Like, we have a lot of CIPs that are still ongoing. We're redoing our watershed management plan. We're for Red Brook, we're doing our vulnerability assessment. We're just kicking off climate action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you need more staff even after the new
I'm
staff
just
begin?
trying to catch my breath. That's, and reassess where we are.
Yeah. Well, and
So I do appreciate
think,
having the extra
Yeah,
staff.
well, and I think I like my counselors, because we have residents who are like, we don't want growth. And so when we have departments being like, we're too busy dealing with growth to focus on maybe other issues that we might want to address. I think that's one of my concerns, is
Yeah.
just that I always felt like planning and engineering is completely bogged down, and you guys get bombarded and you're like, you're trying to, I think you said the last meeting, it's like playing catch up. But I
Yes.
mean, we're playing catch up with development that we don't want. And so I
Well,
think,
I guess I'm gonna put in my other plug too, that we're also working on ordinance changes, right? So we keep talking about the low impact development ordinance that's coming, that I would love to have the support of
Right.
council as we start moving through. That while we have to do it, there are options to look at how that affects development, and doing it responsibly can also look different than we're doing it today. Which also can have kind of another aspect of how you limit development, but you're doing it in a responsible way. I feel like those are the kind of things that we're kind of looking at, is some environmental, which I know you've always been very supportive of our environmental ordinance changes. So I really appreciate that. And I feel like that's kind of the responsible way to kind of do it, in that developers know what they're getting into. You know the rules ahead of time. You can budget for that. You can plan for that. You can design for that. So there's no surprises. And I think that makes complete sense. So I know I went sidetracked a little bit there, but it's,
Yeah.
always want to get a plug in because that's coming.
Just two other things that are current that I think you'll relate to is Sawyer Street has ended
Yeah.
up being a fair amount of time. That just happens to be a current project. I've also asked the technical division to assist in the skate park relocation. Just doing some site evaluation and some base level design. We'd love to do more of that, but time is really short.
Well, I think part of it is like, we have a lot of, one of the things that I feel like with staff is, at least since I've been on council, we pile on, have a lot of different desires, which is good because we're making progress, but you know, you do have your core mission, which is to kind of do the day-to-day stuff that I think sometimes we forget about as we pile on more asks. So I think we also need to show a little bit more focus and prioritization on the council side to make sure that we're, you know, making sure that we're focusing on the right things at the right time with the right amount of resources. Larry, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to maybe clarify, Angela, you're saying to Karen's question, those bigger municipalities kind of have a larger admin infrastructure to spread this work over, and you are viewing that if we set up this district with the fees and all, you don't anticipate that our current staffing could really absorb that work. So,
Like engineering doesn't have admin.
right, right. I mean, yeah,
We do it that ourselves as well. I mean, I try to grab what I can, but, yeah, so
okay.
there are pieces. And like I said, I think Liam kind of laid out what we kind of need as minimum.
And I think if we think of other utilities, I mean, they have a whole billing department, they have a whole customer service department, they have an, an inspection team and external staff. That's
Don't do their own billing, like they do it through.
Yeah. And more than likely, we would be using our current systems and
Yep.
and vendors and such, but undoubtedly, there's a collections piece. And so there does need to be someone that is kind of dedicated to this and following up. This is also can be tricky. They're done right. This kind of system would have, what's the word, not exclusions, exemptions.
Right.
That
We have to
requires
we have to provide credits, yeah.
credits.
That's
Thank you.
part of
And
the
so that
process, yeah.
requires kind of field testing and confirming. That's one of these three positions, call it enforcement, but it could also be just checking on the credits. That, yeah, that's legitimate and they should be giving that. Then that of course informs how the billing happens.
Right. Is the big lift more at the beginning, getting it set up, evaluating, doing the GIS and all of
What
that?
What I heard from Portland is, they actually hired a full, customer service team.
Right.
Like, I think 5 or 6 people just answering phones and questions and credit. Like, everybody wants to know, how do I get a credit? And so you're actually kind of talking about some technical pieces with lay people that are trying to figure out. So I think they had to do a big push at the beginning with heavier staff and then pulled back, which I think is always. the case
They've
with
also
some of
recently
them.
changed their billing cycle, which I think added to
Yeah.
questions and
Yeah.
concern and comments.
I think my comments are more for you guys, where it just comes to, I think, are we okay as a council saying this is not an equitable way to, manage stormwater fee when it comes? For me, that is gonna be what I'm gonna continue to say, is that I do not think it's okay that, someone with their 5 acres and, $3 million home out there is paying less or paying the same as me for stormwater management. I think this is inequitable, and I think that this is something that I wanted to explore to make it more equitable throughout the town, and then make financing these things more palatable for the residents, where if I'm living in my little condo or my little cape, my stormwater fee is not going to be what it is for someone who has their big driveway and their pool and all of those things like that. And I think,
Wouldn't some of that shake out in the property tax rate?
so I mean, it's not broken down that way. It's all just
Right.
part of one budget, I'm saying. So I think what we're saying is, especially where we are and what we have coming down the line between just this capital improvement plan in front of us and the vulnerability plan. I'm just saying, I will say that I do not think it is equitable for this town. I think this is an inequitable practice. I just want to create a system that where everyone's paying their fair share. And I understand that, the chart we had last month says it's shifting to residents. Well, yeah, that's because, we're the ones plowing down trees and putting parking lots. And that's why you should have a higher stormwater fee. Part of it is to deter people. And so I think one of the feedbacks that we got, and I went, I tried to get my clear cutting thing through last night and I couldn't for the town, but it's just that, we're tired of all the trees being cut and parking lots being as big as they can. This is a tool that you use where you're actually saying, no, like you have to specifically pay because you're doing that. So I understand that it's a big lift. I'm concerned that because it's so much work that we just don't want to take it on right now. And because we're so busy with development, and that's just kind of my interpretation. And so I appreciate everyone taking the time and effort to look into this. I'm just going to continue to reiterate that I don't think it's equitable and I don't think it's fair, especially considering our location and the situations and the stuff that we're going to be dealing with coming out of the vulnerability assessment and things like that. But that's all I got.
Okay, I appreciate your take on that as far as the equitability of it. I think, which is kind of where I was last time, I think what I'm weighing that against is, rather than, if we decided that the stormwater plan needed more attention and more resources, I think I'd rather spend $350,000 on a project each year than overhead. And so that's where I was, is really truly just the additional overhead costs, which theoretically never go down, you know,
Do
because.
you two think it's okay that people right now are paying nothing towards the stormwater management fees? Because that, I mean, we also do have big people in town who are paying
Yeah.
nothing towards it, so that's
And
why.
churches and
and things like
nonprofits
that. And
and
so I
other
think-
groups. I mean, I think for me, I feel like this is a solution looking for a problem. I think the economics about this are really, really poor. I think when we talk about 1%, maybe 2% of the budget, assuming we're low, that's not a big deal as it relates to residents. And I think looking at that chart, I think all we're doing is shifting the tax shift to the property owners. And we also have an affordability issue in town. So balancing the equity with affordability, I think all we're doing is making it more expensive for our residents. Again, when I look at this relative to some of the comparisons that you've brought up, especially as it relates to other communities, they have really huge infrastructure costs that we don't have that kind of merit the necessity for this. So I feel like it seems more effort than it's worth the reward. And I worry too politically about things like rain tax or church tax or whatever you want to call it in terms of trying to make it equitable. All we're really doing is making it more confusing for our residents. And I think I see people in town seeing this as another way for the town to kind of say we're lowering property taxes because we're giving you another fee and then we're just going to keep raising that fee instead. And I don't think that's good fiscal management. I think it makes it more confusing about like where the monies are actually coming from. So to me, now's not the right time to pursue this. And even going back to the conversation about staff time, like I don't want staff pursuing any more work on this at this point because you have other more important things that we need you guys focused on. So as far as I'm concerned, for this goal, we've done our due diligence, we've looked into it. Economically, it doesn't make sense. I agree with you, Larry. Like I'd rather spend the money somewhere else. And even when we look at the CIP, my question for you, Angela, is could we go any faster with any of those? Like, could we actually move them up and invest in them earlier? Or is there a sequence that you have there?
There is a sequence that as we do design and construction and going kind of flip-flopping back and forth with Red Brook and Phillipsbrook, but I also just got on the new position that you guys put in my budget, who's a young engineer. It's fantastic. But to that point, eventually getting him up to speed and then kind of moving through some projects, I think just wanted to lay out, we do have quite a bit in front of us, but it was helpful that we have another person to kind of help see us through that. And I think to Councilor Stroop's point, staff is really appreciative. Obviously, if anybody for stormwater, that's my big thing. And Tom gets sick of me talking about stormwater, and that's my passion. And so I really appreciate you guys kind of actually taking, having this real conversation and looking for ways to improve what we do with stormwater. And I'm going to keep asking. The number will continue to go up with the request as our MS4 permit compliance gets higher and higher. And so things change, things shift. I will continue to have conversations in a regional. I've always said, I really think that's kind of our approach for the small town that we have, is really kind of looking at our partners around us and kind of doing something more holistically. That might change. That's always going to be part of the conversation of maybe finding other avenues. And if this is not the path now, we can explore other
Right.
things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, they're doing this all over the country. They make it work. They've been able to market it. They've been able to make residents understand it. They're doing this in more advanced, I don't know, I've lived in Maine 20 years and sometimes I feel like we're just kind of catching up to what's going on. And so I think that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this. And, I think, again, I think it's inequitable if we have these things. And I understand we're shifting the burden to more residents, but we're actually going to be collecting from people who are paying absolutely nothing right now. And I think, yeah, it's a hard education, but that's kind of why I wanted to do that, was because I do feel like that is inequitable, but apparently that is not something we can pursue.
Yep. So with that, maybe because we're supposed to take action, I would just suggest that we motion to no longer pursue a stormwater fee at this point, and maybe continue conversations with the council in the next goal setting around more stormwater emphasis that we want to make in terms of actions or investments, and just try and continue that conversation, because I think that's definitely worthy, especially if we want to prioritize or move some of these things up, or even depending on what comes out of the new low impact standard ordinance, like if there's things there we need to do, I think that's a worthy continued conversation. But at least the fees, I think it's time to just like stop exploring these for now. And maybe in the future, if it makes sense, a future council can decide to do that. So my motion essentially is to no longer pursue a stormwater fee at this time, but encourage council to continue to explore options for future stormwater improvements. Any a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I will just say that, looking at this slate of projects that are already identified, if we could put some emphasis on that and look at the cost benefit part of it. This is spread over 5 years and maybe you've, included some inflation escalators because it's going to be 5 years from now before we tackle some of these. But if we know they're coming, that it makes sense from a sequencing standpoint, there could be some financial advantage to speeding it up as well by paying it in today's dollars.
Just as an aside, I will note that the majority of these operating and also capital expenses are currently funded through downtown TIF revenues. I mention that for two reasons. One, that means that taxpayers that didn't exist before 2018 are paying these bills. And two, there's at least an 80% saving or a 20% savings by using TIP dollars. So I'm not saying it's the ultimate long-term solution, but in the near term, that's how we're choosing to address these environmental investments.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess if we do not want to pursue other ways to get more funds towards that budget and not things like that, and try to create a fee to be able to get it from, you know, people who are in town that are paying nothing right now, that is your prerogative.
Yeah. Right? All those in favor? All those opposed? All right. Next item is the school impact fee. Thank you, Karen. So last time we looked at this, I think the big conversation was around the percentages that we were applying to different housing unit types and wanting to kind of see, we felt like they were a little low, so should we look at those? And so I know you've come forward with another recommendation.
Sure. What we've done is refined where we were from the last time we met. Essentially, what we've done is two big projects, or two big parts of this. One is, let's look at the current relationship between different types of units and single family, because that's how the impact fee was done before. It says, hey, a duplex is, I think, 38% of the impact that a single family was. And so there was a whole schedule of relationships that's in the current impact fee ordinance. So I took a look at that and made a few adjustments that we can talk about in a second. Second, the big piece of looking forward is being able to say, what do we think the distribution of the types of units are going to be into the future? Because that makes a difference in whether or not you hit your target of the type of fee or the amount of fees that you need to do. In other words, if they're all single family, we hit the target with a lower impact fee. If part of them are multifamily and multifamily pays a lower rate compared to single family, as is justified by the amount of children that they generate for the school system, then the whole system gets ratcheted up. We have to increase the base rate of the single family so that we end up generating the amount of money that we said we were going to do. And in order to do that, you have to make a projection. And I have done that, but there is nothing magical about that projection, and they are certainly open to suggestions. So let me walk you through what we've done and what we have refined. Again, I think, John, you just summarized where we were. We want to look at the relationship between single family and other types of units. We want to project that growth by types of units over the 30 years. And we want to revise the number of projected units. And then I focused in on two scenarios, both using the 30 years as a payback period. The first scenario takes into account the base bond plus the financing charges. And the next one takes the base bond, financing charges, and then adds in what we had left.
Existing debt on the
Existing
books.
debt. And we did refine that a little bit. Norm and Tom took a red pencil and said, well, of that 45 million we were using before, really only 30 million are true capital costs that you would assign to an impact fee. So we did that refinement as well.
Sorry, are those existing debts specific to the schools?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But not all of it was construction or
And the vast majority is the remainder debt on the Wentworth School, which was our last big capital investment.
yeah. So let's start with the fee distribution. So I looked at, in a special run, I pulled a special run that related children in units by type of unit for both just total under 18. And then I also looked at isolating 5 to 17, which is the school age children. And, in a nutshell, there's not such a significant difference between looking at the single family, the under 18 and the 5 to 17. So I just sort of blended those two, and it's not exact, but a reasonable allocation. And what you see there is how many children per unit under 18 that are generated by the different types of units. And the difference that I found with using current information versus what we had in the impact fee ordinance is that the single family attached, the townhouses and the 2 to 4 units per structure did wind up generating a little bit more children than we had originally projected. So I put that in a separate category. And then when I looked at multifamily, the 5 to 9 units and the 10 plus units really broke out differently. So in the 5 to 9 units per structure, they generated more children per unit than the 10 units per structure. So I laid those out, and then I just compared it back to the single family, and that's what you're looking at in terms of if we set single family as the 100% single family attached, 2 to 4 units per structure generate about half of what a single family does in terms of children. 5 to 9 units is about 35%. And then 10 plus units really did break out, generating much less. I went ahead and just rounded up to 10% for that. So that's a suggested alignment there. It's not significantly different from what we had in the original ordinance, partly because the original ordinance broke it out a little bit differently in terms of where they did the breakpoints. But those seem some natural breakpoints in terms of the amount of children per unit that are being generated.
Those percentages would ultimately apply to 30% of the single family base
Correct.
rate, if you will.
Yeah. So in other words, whatever the single family rate is, the townhouses and the 2 to 4 units are going to pay half of that. 5 to 9 units are going to pay 35%. And then 10 plus units per structure is 10%.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So I remember when we did the enrollment study, one of the things that I took away from it was a single family house compared to a 3-bedroom unit in a apartment typically produce the same set of children. And so I'm just curious why you didn't go that approach in terms of like number of bedrooms in a unit that could do that. Because I know some of these, like when I look at a 10 plus unit per structure, I know it's probably like, say it's 100 units, some are 1 bedroom, some are 2 bedroom, some are 3 bedroom, and it's not like they're all 3 bedroom, but
Right. Very, very few of those
Yeah.
are.
but that's where I look at some of those and I'm like, is this too small? Because if there's 3 bedrooms in there and they're more likely to produce more children, are we really getting the full impact of
Right, right.
happening?
So this just happens to be with the data sets that we're using,
Yeah.
which we're looking at all units and associating all children that we know of. And this was how I could pull it out. I will say that there's a possibility that I can pull out the total data set by number of bedrooms, but unfortunately, the federal shutdown has shut off the spigot for being able to access the census data in the way that we need it. Because what we do is we go in, because this is not a standard piece of data, and I don't know why, because I think every community wants to know this type of information, but it's not part of the standard analysis. But what the census allows you to do is you can go in and you can do a special crosstab on your own. You have to do it under their definition, but you can actually create something that doesn't exist in the regular output. It's just using the data. They just have a mechanism called public use microdata. And this was the data that I can get consistently every year, so I can look at the progress.
So unit types are reported as a standard. Getting granular to the bedroom level is a little more complicated to get.
Yeah, it's impossible right now. So it's not always impossible. It just happens to be impossible right now. For reasons we just said.
Presumably those variations of 1, 2s, and 3s, combination of them, is captured somehow, maybe not exact, but captured in even this approach.
I could see it. I worry about, and I guess this is probably like a future thing, like as we talk about future development, if we have, you know, a unit of like 50 rooms, there's gonna be 3 bedrooms. So like, what would that look like in terms of, like, are we fully covering the 3 bedrooms?
Charging the 1 bedroom the same rate.
Yeah,
And so
Yeah.
we're collecting money that we don't need.
that's true. That's true.
And so
Good point.
it's a blending over.
Yeah.
Right. This is one blending, and one that I have some confidence in being able to,
Defend.
under usual circumstances, being able to extract. And I'm perfectly happy, once I have access to it again, to try to pull the bedroom units. I don't know that we're gonna get that much difference in terms of overall. But I do think that given the changes going on in what we think the future may be, either things that we may do in town or the impact of legislation in terms of what types of units can be built, we're going to have to be on top of this, because the change in a distribution of those units makes a big deal in terms of how much we're collecting. And the important part is that at the end of this period, we want to ensure that we've paid ourselves back the right amount and that we've collected the right amount of money.
So in the absence of that, what you've done, I think, is look back 30 years and say, well, what's happened? Isn't an exact predictor of the future.
That's correct. That's
But that's the
correct.
best we have.
Yeah.
And that's
And-
the next table.
Yeah, that is the next table. Thank you for moving us along.
Not so subtle, was it?
Yes, no, it was, I told Liam he could move me along, but it is good to be able to understand from whence these numbers come. So, and this is just the existing and proposed, just what we've been talking about. So you can see some of the differences. What happens is some of the, some units in the middle are charged more than they were, and some, the really micro units, or the denser units, I should say, get charged less. So if we look at the next slide. So over the last 10 years, we've had about 37% of the new units were single family. And the rest were various types of multifamily, from 2 units to more. And so this is a reasonable guess of the distribution. I'm gonna say 40% are single family. If things change, if we are subjected to some of the legislation that's out there, that single family number could go way up. And if the well, I'll get to that. What's the impact of the single family going up? There's no magic. The magic in the data is really the 60-40 split, 60 in terms of really multifamily units. The mobile homes is in there simply because I could pull that out. I don't know. I don't think we're really going to have 3%, but it's the same as the 10 units per structure. So I let that ride. Now,
The one thing you're making me think though is like, however the council ultimately decides to move this forward, whatever we do in policy, we should probably put in there, like, it needs to be revisited every
absolutely.
so often to make sure that if the growth patterns change, because I think the ultimate goal is to make sure we're collecting the total amount that we want through new growth. And we want to make sure that if for some reason there's a swing one way that maybe makes it too high,
Mhm.
same way we need to go down, right? Like if,
Sure.
to your point, if we're 40% now, but it goes up to 60%, then we're maybe overcharging single family homes, and we want to bring that down to make sure that we're not making it so expensive for single
Exactly.
family homes.
And you could tie that to the rate of growth ordinance because you have to review that,
Yeah, it's
you
good.
know, every 3 years. So you could include this as part of that.
Yeah.
And so the reason I skewed this probably a little bit more on the 10 plus units is I'm trying to make sure that we're collecting the right amount. And so if there's going to be an error, if I've overestimated the 10 plus units, we're going to be making up for it. If I overestimate that because we collect less per unit on the 10 plus, then we got to do some makeup in future years. So I was probably a little bit generous in terms of this amount, but I am fully willing to explore a different distribution if somebody wants to do that. I have a spreadsheet that all we have to do is go back and change those numbers. Okay, so let's look at the first scenario. And this is the goal is 45 million, 45.8 actually. And if we do this strictly based on single family detached units, the fee would be $5,873. And then if we, ran that all the way through, the base fee is what you get if you're just controlling for that single family and applying 100% in single family. I generated the other fees because that's what we're doing. So you can see if you run the numbers at 40% single family against that base fee, you wind up with 26 million. Oh, I got it right here. I don't know why I'm looking at the screen. And that is far less than the 45 million that we need, which means we have to jack up the single family. Now, this was a fun mathematics to come up with the mechanism to do this. But basically, in order to get 45 million, the single family impact fee is $10 million. I mean, $10,000. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Not 10 million, 10,000. And then you can see the different fees going down. If you look at scenario 2, which is adding that extra $30 million in, I kept everything else the same. The single family base fee or the single family adjusted fee winds up being 11,400.
Because the goal is 52 million rather than.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did run some other test scenarios, like you can jack up that percentage of single family, and then if you increase the single family percentage, you lower the fee in terms of your projection. And that's where the numbers stand. You can certainly make you could aggregate some of those categories. And you could do 40%. If you wanted to reduce all of those categories down to one fee, instead of breaking it out by all of those different categories, you could do that. I ran a number of different scenarios, and, happy to share those with you if you want to look at something else. But anyway, this is the schedule that comes up with the amounts that we need to collect over the 30-year program. And then this is just simply hey, what does that mean compared to where we were? Where if you're a single family, there were 4 units on Highland Avenue that were permitted. The existing fee is $5,400, $5,390. Under this new system, it would be $10,000. So it's adding $10,000 to the cost of each of those homes. And it has nothing to do with the projection or the forecast. I just wanted to know in my head, what does that mean compared to a price of a house? I went ahead and pulled the one house that sold this year on Highland Avenue. It was about $750,000. So if you did 10,000, you're looking at 1.4% of the total cost of the house is assigned to that particular impact fee. And then I looked at the Dunstan Crossing duplexes. Some people you might call them attached houses. It's all in the eye of the beholder, what you want to call them, but they're 2 units per structure. And that was $4,120 for the individual fee. So it added about, actually it's $5,200. It added 0.7%. So less than 1% of the total cost of the unit would have gone. This is the sales, not the building cost, but the sales. And then Nunsuch River Apartments, I did the same thing. Under the assessing records, those units are valued at about $171,000. If they had to pay the revised fee, they'd be paying about 0.6% of the cost of that fee. And it's not perfect, but what you're looking at is the relative comparison of these types of units by their impact. And I looked at a number of different ways to calculate that impact and to come up with other mathematical equations. This one seemed to be the most straightforward. And this is why I say knowing and tracking how much growth is going to happen and what that distribution of growth is absolutely going to affect this. And I'll stop at that. The one thing that I didn't tackle, because I lay it in your laps, is the affordable housing piece, like how you want to do it. If you want to pick a percentage discount, my suggestion is affordable housing comes in all different sizes and types. I say pick the type, apply the fee, and then do your discount. As opposed to saying, hey, all affordable housing is 50% of single family. Just pick what discount
Use
you
the
want.
same formula as if it was a 1-bedroom or one, say 5 per structure. Use that same thing as the for-profit.
Exactly.
And then decide on a percentage discount.
Right.
Do other communities do anything like that, or?
No other communities definitely do a discount on for affordable housing units, and everybody does it differently. And Tom did ask me, which I forgot to do, is to go back and see if anybody else has updated their school impact fees. Originally, when I pulled the comparison of the impact fees, there weren't some modern or current building projects that they were using a school impact fee for. There were some older ones, and so those fees are all out of whack compared to what we're doing. So I do need to take a look at that. I don't think Cape, who just approved their bonds last time around, they're not using impact fees to my knowledge.
Really? Wow.
No, I think most main municipalities don't have impact fees. I mean, we're in kind of rarefied air, particularly when you look at the suite of fees we have.
Right. There's a few. So I can go back and I'll go back and double check that since we've got a little time for the election. But, I'm happy to take questions. I'm happy to take suggestions on what people's sense of the growth will be if they want to change that. Again, I would err just to make sure we're collecting the right amount. If we overestimate the denser units, we wind up with more money. If we underestimate that, that's where we have the problem.
Because it's putting more on the single family.
Yeah, so if we have more single family and that I put in 20%, if that 20% really is 10%, we're good. We're
Right.
collecting the amount. It's if we underestimate that and we're not collecting the amount of fees. So yeah, like I said, it's a little brain tease on how this is working and how you get to make sure that we're collecting the right amount of dollars.
Questions, comments for Karen?
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, I would think we would want to overestimate the denser units because I feel like the path that we're going is we've created these growth zones where we want density. And now we're feeling the hurt of like, we knew we need schools, and even one more student, like we need to compensate for that.
Yeah.
So like my initial response is like, I feel like that's the way we would want to go. One of the things that I thought was interesting, that chart you had up, was how much of the percentage of the home value is the impact fee. And it was also interesting to hear that not everyone has impact fees. I'm curious how that compares to other communities. Like,
I will pull
I'm
that.
curious, because I mean, that's a big number, but if you want to live in Scarborough, like,
Yeah.
I mean, is it typical? I mean, our home values are high, so is a 1%, I like that 1% number. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like if I went to a neighboring community, like with their school impact fee, maybe come down to 1% of their home value,
Yeah.
just kind of out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to price people out, but I want to be,
Yeah.
I want to overestimate. I don't want to I don't want to
Yeah.
fall short.
It's not oversimplistic to say that in Scarborough, right now, it costs, well, if you look at all our impact fees, we estimate it's about $10,000 when you look at traffic and, so it costs you $10,000 more out of the gate to build in Scarborough than it does in Buxton. And Gorham's not a good example necessarily, but so that's the pinch point. There's an affordability impact here, no question.
We're hurting.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
that's the point. You want to live here, then pay
Yeah.
for it, because right now
Yeah.
we're
But
hurting.
as a percentage of home value, it might not be, if take just a dollar amount, if it's $10,000 on a $600,000 home and somewhere else doesn't have that, but it's a $400,000 home,
Right.
it makes a difference. Were you set, Karen? I didn't
Yeah,
want to-
yep.
It seems like there's a couple of variables that would affect this, and to John's point, I think we would absolutely need to have some structure to update it. But between the state mandates and the general push in town to develop less, the initial 7,800 units could be suspect as well, right?
Right.
And so if we end up building less than that, we're not going to collect as much either.
Correct. So that's based on the 260 units a year on the
On the rate of growth.
ordinance, yeah.
A lot is riding on LD 1829, frankly.
Right.
That number could go up considerably.
Yeah,
Any further thoughts or comments?
I'm good right now, thanks.
What about Karen's provocation around how we want to address affordable? I would be fine saying there's a discount factor per unit type, just to keep it simple. And I would also hope maybe it would encourage in some of these units that they actually build some affordable. We talked a lot about at the Affordable Housing Committee or the Housing Alliance, how I feel one way about doing inclusionary zoning in the future to try and encourage more affordable units and market rate apartments. And so I don't think impact fees altogether will sway developers, but like if they know that, hey, if you put these in, you're going to get a discount on the impact fee, that might maybe encourage or incentivize putting in some affordable units. So I'm comfortable saying that there's a discount for affordable housing. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I don't know if that needs to be consistent across every project, but would it become one of the considerations or variables in an application for affordable housing where they're going for a housing alliance grant or a CEA program or something, that would be one other factor rather than a set percentage for every project. It'd become kind of a basket of incentives to build the project.
Mm.
I don't know if that's doable that way.
The unique thing that's offered with these is that there are covenants that require compliance for the 30 years. So we have a high degree of confidence based on these covenants in enforcing who can live there. So it's not just bedrooms, which we can theorize impact from. We know more about the demographic. It's the senior buildings. I don't think they exclude children, but the likelihood of having children in these 55 plus or even older are very, very slim. So it may be for those kinds of units, there's an outright exemption.
Yeah.
But certainly for family affordable, I think it makes sense to have a fee apply.
Yeah, but maybe at a discounted rate.
Do other people discount that? I mean, is that a common practice?
I've seen that in some of the few places that I've found the impact fees for schools. I've seen that, and they've done it for other types of impact fees. But I will get you guys more information and update that list and what they are and how they discount.
Or they may ask for a waiver, which I would
Right.
not recommend you set yourself
Yeah.
up for another, waiver question. Set your policy and leave it, stay consistent.
How are you guys feeling about scenario 1 versus scenario 2 of really adding in the additional 30 million or excluding it? I personally feel like if it's costs that we have to address, we should include all costs. So I'm leaning more towards whatever we do should be inclusive of any existing debt that we still need to pay down, that 30 million that you guys mentioned. So I don't know. But again, I think why I think we're including it is, again, trying to not make the fees so high that they become, unattainable, especially for like a single family home person who wants to build a home. There was one person who emailed me and they were like, I paid 10,000 or whatever they paid for impact fees. And they're like, that's crazy. And I'm like, well, it's what we have in Scarborough. Like, to your point, if you want to live and build here, that's kind of what we've said we want to do. And so I feel like we need to include scenario 2.
Can I just ask for a little history of we've incurred this debt on these past projects? Did the impact fees not exist at all then, or just at a
Yeah.
lower rate? Okay.
Too, and that's what allows us to slide this in, I think.
Okay.
If we'd had a set impact fee and we had already paid ourselves back, and we couldn't do that because what somebody might say is, hey, you're assigning old debt to new development. What I would say is we've had an impact fee over time already. And so we've been continuing to pay that down. And I think because we've had the impact fee and we've been paying towards that, I think it makes sense that we can add that. I think we could reasonably defend adding that in. And to be honest, it doesn't make the
Yeah.
biggest difference.
Mhm.
And the future development, for future growth continues to benefit from the investments that were made at Wentworth. So it's not as if there's no future enjoyment and use, if you will.
I mean, yeah, so there's going to be overlapping time is the way I look at it.
So I think it's important. One, I don't think we should try and make this perfect because, again, there's so many things that could change, but I think my big thing is like, assuming the school passes, which I hope it does, we want to be able to collect these fees as soon as we can. And so, because we're about to switch councils, my suggestion is we try and offer up a recommendation that we can at least push forward to the next council. And then again, if they want to put it back to finance or whatever in the next council for more work, we can, but I think it would be great for the next council as early as December, assuming the school passes, to have a workshop on this probably to kind of get more information and see if they want to make changes, but try and get it as quickly as we can to a first read to make sure that we're not collecting on any fees, assuming the school passes.
Well, and I do think I think we should be right on top of it because it should be a part of the conversation about the growth story and
Yeah.
what the levers are we have to use and how, because this certainly could have some impact on growth of people that say that's too much to pay, I'm gonna go to Gorham, so you could, depending on how you fall on the whole growth subject, you could view that as a disincentive to build here.
Or consider
Want
another
them to
way
do that. I mean,
that if they're coming, they're gonna pay their fair share.
yeah.
Right.
yeah. It's, I mean, we just want to be careful when we phrase that because we shouldn't use the impact fees as a way to discourage. But I think because of the fee, there will be some discouragement.
Yeah.
But that's not the purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Purpose is to recoup.
Yeah, it's just, I'm just saying it's like,
Yeah,
okay, conditions kind
yeah,
of.
exactly, exactly.
So I would like to motion that we move forward with scenario 2 recommendation to council for consideration for impact fees and schedule a workshop on this if the school ballot passes in December. Again, ultimately, council leadership can decide what date works, but more just to keep the momentum going, I think that would be important. And I'll include in my motion that we, for now, and again, we can modify this at first read or whatever, put in as part of your assumptions, a 50% per unit decrease for any family affordable housing projects across those different categories.
And as part of that exemption for 55 or senior, I don't know what that,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of implied. Is that implied already in here based on what you put, or do we need to add that specifically in?
We should add that specifically, just so there's no.
Okay, and add exempting senior only affordable housing projects from paying school impact fees. So just to repeat, going with scenario 2, 50% on affordable housing reduction, exempting senior affordable housing projects from paying a school impact fee. I need a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I mean, I like scenario 2. I guess I don't know how I feel about the 50%, the affordable housing.
Okay.
Because I think just with like what I've learned to date and like, we do end up incurring more cost generally when we have affordable housing in town, not just, just
Mhm.
across the board. And so I think if it's not actually the affordable people who are the ones coming in paying for the housing, I understand that they're getting funding and all of that stuff. I guess that's the one that I think I would like to discuss more with council, I guess. And see
Yeah,
how
I think
they
that's the
feel.
way to look at it. Yeah.
Cause I'm like, no,
Yeah.
is that right? If they have the funding there and we're just saying, oh,
Yeah.
well, no.
Yeah, I'm not 100% married to it. I think at least it gives us a recommendation to bring for a workshop. We can,
recommendation for discussion.
Yeah.
Really, the
Right.
workshop.
Right.
yeah,
You can recommend the mechanism and leave the percentage.
Now, when I remember there was senior housing in Old Orchard that excluded children from living in them. So like, I think I would feel comfortable with excluding senior housing that did not allow children to live there. Because there's a difference, because there's senior housing where seniors can live, but can a child live within that senior unit? I think there's different scenarios throughout.
And we're also saying affordable restricted
Right,
projects,
and
not,
I mean,
not
some
market
people
rate,
live with
so.
their grandparents, so I'm not
Yeah.
trying to I'm just saying, like, I want to understand that more, because I do think that you could technically have some sort of senior housing, but if they don't exclude children, there could be a grandchild, or, I mean, people do have babies late, and there could be a teenager living
Yeah,
there, and they're
true.
going to the school. Or I'm gonna go live with grandma because now she lives in affordable housing in Scarborough, and I can go to Scarborough school system.
I've definitely been involved with projects where they say nobody under 21 can be living there.
Yeah, and I don't wanna
But
like
I don't-
nitpick and put more
Yeah.
restrictions and stuff, but
But-
I do have concerns of that happening.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any HUD housing rules or anything around that. I don't know enough about that, but I think I'm okay with John's motion in that, it puts all that on the table, I think, for
Right.
us to keep going with.
And it would be great, again, we'll ultimately allow council leadership to determine when the workshop is, but I would hope that it's, I would love to see this momentum go, especially if the school passes, so we can get them in as quick as possible.
No, I appreciate the work this summer, so you're all teed up.
All right, all those in favor? All right. Next is discussion and action on the use of the turf reserve account. Answer's no.
Shannon?
Okay. Shannon and I are both here, and Shannon actually thought you guys were ending at 6, and she's gotta go to the,
Oh, okay.
the community meeting.
Oh,
Community
sorry.
workshop. It's okay, but I don't think there's a whole lot that we're bringing to you that you haven't seen already, right?
No, so do you guys want to just quickly like set the stage and then? I mean, we read the stuff in the packet. Does anybody have questions for them? I guess my only question was, if we're using this, like, how is it going to be used? Is the ask that we want to apply all of it immediately in the next budget cycle, or are we looking to, depending on the specific bonds that we're applying it to, are we spreading it out over a couple of years? That was my only.
Yeah, I think our current scenario is that we have bonds that have been issued for the turf, because that was done
Mhm.
2 summers ago. So there's existing debt service, right? So that's an expense that we have today. There's also the new bonds that will be issued for the track portion of the project, which haven't been issued yet. So there really are a couple of ways we could come at it. We could say that the existing debt service on the turf, we would apply those available funds to paying that down. But I think the original thought was, before going out to bond for the track portion of the project, perhaps we could discount our need to borrow money,
Mhm.
because we already have that little bit in the bank that we could apply up front. So we didn't really say, we have a specific desire one way or the other, but we definitely thought there was an opportunity for
Is there
some application of those funds
Yeah.
in this moment.
Is there a better fiscal, like which option would be better long-term fiscally? Is it to use the money to,
Borrow less
Yeah.
tomorrow.
or to pay down our debt service from the past? I
Like,
don't.
yeah, where do the dollars go?
I think
the
if
furthest?
you pay down debt,
Norm has his hand
if
up.
you pay down debt service, you're gonna see benefits in probably 1 year's tax support for debt service payments.
Okay.
If you borrow less upfront, then you have the
Right.
longer term debt that is just a lower number, right?
It's like putting a down payment on a house. The more you put,
Given the rate on the existing debt versus
What would
using
like to.
today's rates of what you're likely to have to borrow,
Mhm.
we would be better served to
Borrow less.
borrow less, use it
Coming up.
to pay down the project before we go to market, because the existing debt's in the 2.5 to 3
It's a much lower interest
range.
rate.
Because it's all been either issued in the more favorable bond markets,
Okay,
when
fine.
rates were so much lower.
Yeah.
Versus now we're looking at like 3.5-ish,
Mhm.
either side of 3.5 to borrow, so we would benefit by not borrowing as much.
Yeah, and the project itself has already been through the budget process. It's already been approved. It's already like almost, please dear God, done.
Mhm.
And,
On time and on budget.
yeah, on time. That's only taken what, didn't we say
Yeah.
7 years? I think we said yes.
That's-
But, to Norm's point, we haven't gone out for bond on that yet, so that you guys are gonna be, having a bond issue brought to you, which would include some funds for that. And at that point, I think there could be a decision made to say, well, we don't need this much money, we need a little bit less than that.
Mhm. So do we, for council action, would that be just kind of like what we did last?
For work
last
waterfront,
time?
yeah, reserve accounts you create, you control, so you can authorize the use of. Just unlike other reserve accounts in more modern history, where when they're created, we try to take the time to really indicate what they're for, to give some guidance for the future. There really isn't much of a written record on this. Urban legend was, and I think it made perfect sense, was the concept was, this was put in place when the turf field was first built here. And the idea, it was a real novelty. It was one of the firsts.
Mhm.
And it was in great demand. And the thought was, we'll charge fees, we'll save money, and when it needs to be replaced or repaired, we'll have money, non-tax money to pay for it. What happened is that every other district and every other college in the area had turf fields, and all of a sudden, the interest in our fields, really dried up. And so it didn't ever produce the sort of money that was envisioned. It has, however, helped us do repairs to kind of patch things up, kind of emergency repairs. There is some annual maintenance, just with cleaning and lining and such that certainly this could be used for. We've touched it in the past. So if you use it for this purpose, it will be somewhat at the expense of kind of those annual maintenance expected costs. It's a brand new system, so we don't expect it's going to have kind of unique and big surprises in the near term.
And
Well, and it did indicate that you were collecting some fees still, 5,000 a year or something, so maybe that's adequate for the maintenance.
Yes, community services does have in their operating budget funds as well for the maintenance of all the fields, which includes that facility. But to Tom's point, perhaps now that it's freshened up and lovely and new again, we did lose a lot of revenue over just the past few years with it just not being fully functional athletic space.
For those of you that were here in the early years, the field was failing and it was really a safety hazard. It was peeling up. And so we had to do some emergency repairs, and it was these funds that were used at that time.
Yeah.
So that fund will continue to collect and grow. So if there are ever a future where there's emergency, I guess that's my question too. Like, are we looking to use all 140,000 immediately towards this?
I think
Bond
it
item?
would be a good investment to do that, just to save the town money up front. And then, judging from the fact that we do have money in operating on both school and town sides to keep a nice, fresh, beautiful, repaired facility going for a little while, that would give that fund time to build up
I'm
again.
glad we have this on tape. Frugal Kate is actually.
Kate, yes.
And so this-
And then now,
It's gonna go back and haunt you, but.
we could find the right number. We could
Yeah, rather than depleting entirely, I mean,
take 100,000.
Yeah,
and leave
draw it down
the 44.
to make a noticeable difference, but I think having some contingency available,
Yeah.
non-tax available in a short, upon a council vote, I think makes a lot of sense.
I
Any,
agree with Tom.
yeah. Any other questions for Kate or Shannon?
No, I give you all credit for being creative about it, finding the dollars and coming up with a way to apply it.
So I would like to move then that we apply 100,000 from this fund towards,
The track project.
the track project bond that will be coming out.
Because that's the future piece to be.
For the new bond issue.
Yeah, for the new bond issuance.
Would you consider 120?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I mean,
I would consider 100.
I think we can go, we have a brand new turf.
That's what I-
Brand new
yeah.
track. I don't feel like we need to leave that much in there.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Are you guys okay with that? Okay, well then let's go, I'll remove my motion and I'll amend it to say, let's do 120,000.
Second.
Any discussion?
What number do you like?
She looks 140.
I mean, this is.
144,000.
Yeah, I like it.
That too.
Okay, no, and I
Yeah.
I do
you
think-
know your numbers better.
Well, and I do think when we had this discussion, the discussion I heard was that the annual fees that we do collect essentially are awash with the maintenance. But I also can understand, I tend to be a little bit more conservative with my money as personally, and so I understand like keeping a little nest egg.
Yeah.
So, I would be good with any amount, 130, probably up to 140, but that leaves a very small amount, and I don't know that that's where Tom's comfort is from what I'm hearing. But, even at 130, that leaves you almost 15,000.
Hmm.
And
That's like an interest-bearing account, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, and again, the money that is raised,
Any new money that we.
that comes in would
goes
build
into
that back.
And
up.
something unexpected above that amount, because it's all brand new, probably isn't gonna be $50,000 that we have to come up with for operating, so.
Is there a warranty on turf?
So
It was
would
on
anyone
there,
like
yeah.
to amend my motion to go a little higher than 120?
It's like an auction.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it.
Do I hear one?
I like
Steve,
making
I
Tom
wanna
uncomfortable.
understand
so we
why
should-
we're leaving that amount in there again.
Yeah.
Like, I know we want to, but I'm like, why? Why? Do we really need to leave that much? I mean, I guess we can make interest off of it, but do we really need it? And if, like you said, we want to borrow as little as we can right now.
Yeah.
So,
It's the question of a safety net. What's
Yeah, I
the-
think it's like I view whatever you're leaving in there like a rainy day.
right.
In the event of,
It's brand new.
something we can't even anticipate right now, but something
Okay,
could
so-
potentially happen.
Project's $1 million, so your starting number of 100 is 10% of the project, so there's some context in how much
Yeah.
you would want to put towards it.
Well, and the last $10,000 isn't gonna impact the borrowing or the,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the carrying cost really.
Mhm.
So I think we'd go, so I'd amend the motion to go to like, you know, 135.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion on the amendment to 135? All those in favor? All right, back to main motion, 135. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
So-
Thank you very much.
Will this get added to the next
Say
council
Yes,
agenda?
yeah, we'll have a council action to authorize the use of the reserve money.
Right, and,
Yep.
and I would imagine that even at that time, you all could debate
Mhm.
the exact number as you're authorizing. the
They'll do
bonds.
what you said.
Yeah, they'll take our recommendation. Yeah.
Out loud.
Yeah. All right, next is beach parking revenue.
Fine, before you.
You
Thank you
should.
guys for coming.
See, look at that, Shan's still gonna be on, huh?
Oh, good, We'll see you then.
See.
If maybe we'll see the other two of you.
All right, next is reviewing the beach pass revenue.
Yeah, I thought this was just an interesting little piece of information. I really don't have much, I don't think there's any decision for it, but I know at the time when the fees were changed last time, there was some consternation about that, and some question, what does it mean to the bottom line? And this is kind of at least the initial answer to that. So this does, categorize things in terms of, the different, parking areas and the different pass types. But maybe the easiest thing to do is to look at the overall revenue comparison in the beige. And, we're anticipated to bring in, over $100,000 more this year in total. Now, I must also, note, we had an exceptionally good summer. And weather is the absolute determinant here. So I think we probably need a couple of seasons just to kind of really get a better sense of it, but at least the initial, indication it certainly didn't have a chilling effect from a revenue point of view.
But what was surprising to me is what the daily parking was down significantly, it looks like, right? Even though it was a good summer. So was it busy because more residents came? And it also looked like we had a lot more resident add-ons than we have in the past and resident purchases. So
Yeah, I don't know if we can
it's hard to tell.
conclusively answer those questions, right? We did sell a couple hundred more, passes this year that potentially will reduce the number of daily, users
Mhm.
because they have to pass. Liam, I don't know if you have any other observations on this.
No, I think it's a product of, I think John's correct. I think that we had fewer daily passes, but by virtue of the fact we increased fees, we brought in more revenue. And I think that was probably in addition to trying to look at how our neighbors stack up with daily fees, I think that was perhaps one of the
Mhm.
interested, one of the things is that maybe that will decrease the busyness by being more competitive. Now,
Yeah.
they're not all flocking to Scarborough because it's the cheapest beach in town.
Yeah.
And so I think that was as intended.
Is there any anecdotal feedback from people on the beach or maybe those that live close to it? Like, was there more parking available or less parking available? Yeah.
I think one of the factors in this, I think it was just last year, there was a early morning lower fee option. And that, I think, was a lot of people on the beach early in the morning, surfers. And so that would account for the number of passes dropping, because a lot of those early people weren't going to come pay $20 to stay for an hour, but they did come and pay $5.
They broke down and got a pass finally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that might be part of it, but I had written down that it seemed like we may have helped an overcrowding issue
Mhm.
by having.
Yeah, I can ask staff who, would have a better perspective on that
Yeah.
point. This will be important. I am due to receive a report from Community Services and the Police Department looking at a automated parking system that would be comprehensive, that could be used for lots and on street as well.
Yeah.
And that's something that we'll certainly talk in the new year and perhaps at budget time.
I would be curious to, again, what's the cost? And like how much of this cost to manage and how much of this is going into the fund? Just to really ask the question, are we charging too much? And like, should we reduce the daily fee at all? Like, again, I'm very cognizant of a lot of the feedback we got when we raised it was, it's making hard to have beach access. And so I'm just curious, like, what is like the sweet spot of like how much money we need to raise to help
Mhm.
with projects and to cover our costs and also keep our beaches accessible and not overcrowded? And did we hit the sweet spot? Maybe, but like if we didn't, especially if we're going into a new future of automated parking, like how much do we really want to collect to make sure that we're charging appropriately, making sure that it's like fair based on what's happening
Mhm.
competitively, but that we're not so high that we're again raising money in a fund that we don't have projects for and that it's hurting beach access for Mainers.
As part of the materials we put together for the automated system, we'll do a full fiscal analysis of expenses and revenues and such.
Yeah, and keep in mind that we do expect some pretty significant capital investments in
Yeah.
Herd Park. And
Mhm.
so I think the initial analysis last year was we were kind of breaking even more often than not around our operating expenses, but how much are we actually saving for those additional capital investments? And this whole conversation around should the general taxpayer subsidize our beach operations, or should beach fees cover all of those expenses?
Yeah.
So we can certainly look at the big picture.
Yeah, it's not going to be a perfect fit, but like again, just I think that'll be good as part of the full analysis
Yep,
that you see.
have that.
I think with an automated system, you also might have some opportunity to do some creative timing things where you could have somebody a 2-hour block in the morning for a different rate, and maybe that actually captures more revenue because the $20 person is still coming in after that
Mhm.
less expensive. I know there was some kind of enforcement issues with getting those people then to leave.
Mhm.
They signed up for the $5 rate and I think they had to be out by 9 or something and they
Mhm.
they weren't
Mhm.
leaving, so.
And there'll be an opportunity, we currently don't charge for on-street parking at Pine Point, nor do we at the co-op lot. So if that will just be more revenue that we've never seen before.
Can I just ask, does this revenue all go into community services? Or is it,
It goes into a separate beach reserve that
Okay.
covers our overhead first, and then anything left over is used for capital investment.
okay,
And do we have a sense of how much is in the fund right now?
Forgive me, I don't.
Okay.
Not a lot. Not-
Yeah.
not-
Not enough to fund
Herd Park.
it's needed at Herd Park.
Yeah.
It did fund the improvements at Higgins Beach, the bathhouse and the parking lot 10 years ago.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Nope. All right, with that, I think we're at the end. I don't think there's anybody in the public, at least in the room, anybody online who would like to give public comment? I'm seeing none. All right, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second?
All those in favor? All right, thank you guys.
you.
Was this our last